That day, there had been a few young lads, essentially, who'd been on the canal. They had seen something in the water. They'd seen what they thought were pieces of a dummy. They stopped a passerby, a man, and said, "Can you see that too? Is there something there?"
The man noticed what he thought was a foot with a sock on the end of it. And then he found there was a number of other body parts floating in the water, and he contacted the emergency services and a full-scale operation was launched.
Gardaí arrived. It was hard for them to determine what it was without doing a search of the area. So they called Dublin Fire Brigade. And it was quickly determined that indeed it was human remains.
The body was in 7 different parts.
It was severely mutilated. There were bruises throughout. It was clear whoever owned these body parts had suffered a very violent and gruesome end.
It appeared to be that of a white man.
They weren't long in the water because I saw the bodies being taken out and they were still quite fresh looking.
That shows that the body had been stabbed in excess of 22 times. A lot of the major organs had been very, very badly damaged and suffered a lot of trauma. One significant point was he had no defensive injuries. He had no injuries to his hands himself, so that means he wasn't able to defend himself at any stage. He was surprisingly attacked.
It was then discovered that the head and penis were missing.
This was going to be a long, complicated investigation, as I found out.
When the head wasn't found, there's a strong possibility that the head was in the water as well and that it had sunk.
We discovered that the person originally came from the Horn of Africa. Kenya, Somalia, maybe the southern part of Sudan. And based on the timeline, we've calculated he was living in Dublin or the greater area of Dublin for 7 years.
It took a few weeks. Somebody contacted the Gardaí to say that he saw his friend wearing it around about St. Patrick's weekend, which would have been about 10 days or so before the body was discovered.
That was the real breakthrough in the case. They began to build up a picture.
He was identified as Farah Swally Noor.
We were able to discover that Farah had, with alcohol and drugs, he would become quite violent to people.
He was accused of multiple sexual assaults. He was in a number of relationships, but 2 of them were with very, very young girls, including a teenage girl, and he had lied to her and said that he was 20. He was actually in his early 30s. Another was a girl who was mentally disabled.
She was only 16. She got pregnant and she had a son. And as the father of an Irish-born child, he was granted leave to remain in Ireland.
He just had this horrible, vicious temper and was quite sadistic.
He was in a relationship with Kathleen Mulhall at the time.
Kathleen Mulhall was born Kathleen Ward.
She's actually originally a member of the travelling community.
She'd previously been married to a man named John Mulhall. Their marriage was supposedly very violent. They had 6 children. 2 of those children were 2 girls by the names of Linda and Charlotte.
Linda was the oldest of the children. She was a very, very vulnerable person. Very kind-hearted, a lot of people described her as well.
She was born in 1975. Her first relationship was pretty disastrous. She married a man with a criminal record. They had 4 children, and then that relationship broke down.
After the breakup of her relationship with the father of her children, she got involved with another man by the name of Wayne Kinsella, and he beat the children, beat her.
He would go from bedroom to bedroom or from child to child, physically assaulting the children.
Her younger sister, Charlotte, was a slightly more robust character.
She had a number of previous convictions for drugs, for public order, and this was all the product of the environment that they were brought up in.
Charlotte was convicted of working as a prostitute. Her mother was too. Heroin was a problem for Charlotte and for Linda, for the three of them. And they would do other drugs together, like ecstasy.
One day she's introduced to Farah. She was introduced to him actually by her daughter. They all met up subsequently, and Kathleen and Farah hit it off. And she decided she was going to walk out of her 29-year marriage and take up with him. The violence erupted very, very quickly in that relationship as well. There was quite a few domestics.
He used to regularly beat her, but there was also reports that she gave as good as she got. He broke her wrist at one point with a hurley. Her ribs were smashed. There's hospital records of her presenting seriously injured. Kathleen and Farah went into Dublin city centre, which wouldn't have been far from their home, to have a few drinks. It was still the aftermath of kind of Paddy's Day celebrations. Kathleen rang her daughter Charlotte and said, come in and meet us, have a few drinks. She rang her sister Linda and she said, do you want to come into town?
So they met on the boardwalk. The girls had been drinking quite heavily and they had taken ecstasy. And then they met up with their mother and Farah, and the mother took ecstasy and alcohol as well.
He was starting to fight with Kathleen. The girls were a bit uncomfortable. The girls walked ahead and were trying to ignore the carry-on.
On the way back to the house, Farah saw this young Asian kid and he had got it into his head somehow that this was his kid and started abusing this child on the street. They continued drinking. Kathleen crushed up an ecstasy tablet and put it into Farah's drink because she wanted him to be on the same boat that the three girls were on.
Farah sits on Linda's knee and he's essentially groping her, making suggestions to her, and she tries to brush him off and the situation rapidly gets out of hand.
He then became very creepy and made extremely lewd comments to Linda, and she just became deeply uncomfortable and started shouting at her mother to tell him to stop. Kathleen did, of course, step in, and then a huge row erupted between Farah and Kathleen, and he made a gesture that he was going to slit her throat. It was at this point that Kathleen started exhorting her daughters to kill him. She said, he's going to kill me. Please kill him for me, please.
Charlotte picked up a Stanley blade and she cut Farah's neck very, very cleanly with it and cut an artery. And this alone would have been enough to kill him.
The two of them then attacked him for a significant period of time. That had to have been exhausting.
At this stage, it's chaos. Kathleen is screaming, Farah is screaming.
It was a very frenzied attack. Charlotte stabbed him 27 times.
Charlotte and Linda dragged his lifeless body into the bathroom.
They set about dismembering his body, which they do using the kitchen knife, the Stanley knife, and a hammer to smash through the bones.
They had decided to cut off his head to make sure that he wouldn't be identified.
Linda cut off Farah's penis. She said later that she had done that so that he would never again rape her mother. Farah's body is dismembered into 8 parts.
Kathleen had produced a number of bags, so his body parts were put into black bags, and then she seemed to have some kind of sports bags, and his torso with the Ireland jersey on it was put into one of these kind of big sports bags.
They spent hours scrubbing and scrubbing the blood from the walls, from the floor.
Kathleen Mulhall rang her former husband, John, and told him he needed to come over and help them, that the girls were in a terrible situation.
And then literally gather up every part of the remains and then have to complete the task, bring those down and put them in the canal.
It took about 6 trips between them all, up and back and up and back.
They got the bus all the way to Tala. They took it to a place called Sean Walsh Memorial Park.
Charlotte, finally, she just became so exhausted. She decided she couldn't take any more, and she dug a hole there and then right beside the bed and put his head into it and covered it over as best she could, but they hadn't done a great job.
Kathleen threw the kitchen knife and the hammer away at this point.
the next day, waking up after that night, knowing what you had done, knowing the three of you together have this dark secret and this crime that you committed. And as the drink and drugs wear off, I mean, I'm sure they took them again over the next couple of days to try and deal with it, but you can only do that for so long. Your conscience is going to come back to haunt you.